Hi, everybody. My name is Natalia Siegel. I'm Donor Services Officer at Strong Latinx Community Foundation. Joining me is my colleague, Eric Guidi, Program Officer. Thank you so much for participating with us today. Today, we're gathered to talk about how life drastically changed for nonprofits and philanthropy starting in March 2020. We have a bunch of different perspectives here. I think it's going to give us a real well-rounded conversation and provide a holistic view on this whole experience.
So joining us today, we have a great panel, representatives from nonprofit organizations as well as some donors. Eric, why don't you kick us off and introduce yourself?
Hi, it's great to be with you. Thanks so much for having us. I'm Eric Guckian. I'm the CEO of United Way of the Greater Triangle, where our mission is to eradicate poverty and increase social mobility through the power of partnerships.
Thanks for being here, Eric. To Zulayka.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zulayka Santiago, and I am the founder and creative director of Libélula Consulting, and I also serve as the project manager for the North Carolina Collaborative for Strong Latinx Communities.
Great, thank you. And finally, Diane.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm Diane Amato. I'm the founder of The Art of Giving, which is a giving circle with women participating in collective giving throughout the four counties of the Triangle.
Awesome. Thanks so much, you guys. So, as we started understanding what was going on and after we went immediately remote, right? As you started to understand the current situation as it was unfolding, what did you see in the beginning of the pandemic in terms of needs or responses? And why did you find that being flexible and maximizing impact was so important to you and your organization? Diane, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I think in the very beginning, it started to unfold in that you realized that there were stay-at-home work orders. So if you worked in a nonprofit, you suddenly weren't going to be going to work anymore and you were going to have to be home. And that meant maybe you weren't going to have a fundraiser that you may have had. So for the Art of Giving, we started our process to give out a grant in January, and we chose a focus of fighting hunger in the Triangle. And right as we were getting ready to send grant applications out, the pandemic hit. And there were the stay-at-home orders, and we knew it was going to be really difficult for any nonprofit to write a grant application, let alone take us on a site visit, which is part of our normal process. So we wanted to get creative and work out an alternative plan so that we could get our grant money out without any delay. And then we worked with the Triangle Community Foundation, and we really culled our whole process down to about a week. We went from maybe a 2-month process where we would have to review many grants, cull them down, to really culling a very small pool down to something even smaller, which was 3, and giving each of those organizations $7,000, which we were really thrilled to be able to get it all out. And again, this happened in about a week.
Diane, how many organizations usually get a TAG grant annually?
Annually, it's usually 1 and sometimes 2, but in this case, we had one of our members generously donated an additional $10,000, so we were able to spread out the giving more than we normally would. So we were really thrilled to be able to do that.
Thanks. Does anyone else want to jump in on that question?
Yeah, I will. Well, I think the impact of this pandemic varies so dramatically depending on where you find yourself in terms of your access to privilege and your ability to be able to make that switch to work from home. And so while for me it was an easy transition, I had been already accustomed to doing that kind of independent approach to working. I think it's a very different reality to many of the Latinx communities that we're interested in supporting, primarily because Latinx folks in North Carolina and across the nation are overrepresented in this arena that has now become essential workers, and that many of them did not have the luxury to quarantine the way most of us did. And so it meant for them having to go out to work, oftentimes without the right protections and putting themselves and their families at risk. or, on the other end of the spectrum, getting laid off without being able to access any unemployment benefits or any other supports were available to other people. And so for us, as the North Carolina Collaborative for Strong Latinx Communities, even though we were on this trajectory already to bring participatory grant making to life and to operationalize our value of equity and help shift some decision-making power into the hands of community members, understanding that they know best what is right for themselves and their communities, it required a sort of an expediting of a process. And what we did was take a chunk of the money that we had already raised. So we had raised over $1.5 million and took about $205,000 of that and moved it into rapid response grant making. And so 25 organizations across our state were able to get grants from $5,000 to $10,000 with the explicit purpose of that money going to support the people who were already carrying the heaviest burden and for whom this pandemic just exacerbated inequities. And so working with organizations that we already had relationships with, really moving more boldly into this realm of trust-based philanthropy to get the money into the hands of the people who needed it most.
Thank you.
It's great, Zulayka and Diane. I appreciate hearing your stories. And just to build on some of Zulayka's points about the inequities that are happening as a result of this pandemic. I heard a startling statistic today that 25% of the folks that lost their jobs in this pandemic so far are actually part of the working poor. So they were pretty much in poverty before, and now they've lost their jobs. So, and that's really what we focused on. We focused on the most vulnerable populations, which is, of course, aligned with United Way's mission. We went really fast on this, and I'm really proud of our team for how nimble we were. The thing that I'm really proudest about in our process is similar to what I heard both Zulayka and Diane saying. We actually asked the community organizations what they were hearing in terms of needs, and that directly reflected the dollars. We started this in March, in the middle of March, when the thing started to hit, is when we went live with it. We've raised close to $1.5 million for rapid response, and we've been able to, we're in our fourth round now, but after 3 rounds, we've invested $750,000 into where we see the needs being the highest, and not where we see the needs being the highest, but where the community is telling us where the needs is. So that kind of responsive, representative, and I think we all have something to learn from that. I love, Zulayka, what you said about how do we get those that are in closest proximity to the problem to be deciding where the money goes. Because, at the end of the day, what do I know? I don't pretend to know what's happening in different communities where I don't frequent and where I don't live. I think that's more and more where we're trying to go as a United Way, and I think where we need to go as a community as we start to move through this.
I think what was really important also is to be able to give all the money as unrestricted, because we wanted the United Way, do with it what you need to do with it. If you were going to get that money, whoever you get it from, you know best where to put it. So that was really important in this round.
Yeah, in terms of our process, we had over 200 applicants. They only needed to apply once. They can edit it, but it was literally a 1-pager where they talked about these are the needs that we're seeing in the community. And again, so it's more information for us to use in terms of the grant making process. But again, just the fact that people don't have time to write grants right now. They're responding to crises, because a lot of these organizations are needing to pivot as well. And now is not the time to be, putting a whole bunch of restrictions on folks.
Definitely.
Get the money out because the need is acute.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. That was really very helpful in understanding how all different realms of the community came together to respond to this with a lot of flexibility and nimbleness, I think. So now that we're 10, 12 weeks into this, sort of what changes have you witnessed or participated in that you really hope to take with you into the future post-pandemic, that you really want to make a habit in our field, in your organization? Zulayka, do you want to go first?
Oh, yes. Yeah, this is definitely an area that gives me hope. What we saw is that even though the pandemic was not this great equalizer, as so many people have referred to it as, what it has served to do, unfortunately, in a very painful way, is to remind us how very much our lives are interconnected. We are inextricably linked. And so moving away from this charity lens, we've seen this as an opportunity for the philanthropic sector to move more boldly into this realm of trust-based philanthropy and doing away with these measures of control that are just for control's sake, and figuring out how to streamline and simplify these processes, making it more accessible to the folks on the front line who need these types of supports the most. And that this is not about, glorifying individual donors or foundations, but again, figuring out how to maximize impact for all of our community members. And that, again, this is another opportunity for us to sit with our own privilege, to sit with our own access to power, and to start making some concrete strides to shifting those traditional power dynamics. And like we were talking about before, moving decision-making power into the hands of the folks who know best how to address the problems within their communities. For us to understand, once again, that we do this for our collective well-being. And so I've seen with the North Carolina Collaborative for Strong Latinx Communities, these foundations really beautifully moving in this direction. And my hope is that even well beyond this pandemic, we let this message or this learning really saturate our bones, so that it impacts everything that we do from this point forward.
I'm just so inspired by what Zulayka just described, and I too am hopeful. What I think Zulayka just very eloquently articulated was moving from a charity model to a justice model, and we have to look the inequities of this country and in this region square in the face. If we're going to be relevant to the impact that we want to see in community, we have to not only work with community but for community, and we have to move to be responsive to community in ways that we haven't before. So we need to be pivoting and getting money out. Some real concrete examples of how we've done this in the last 2 years, and it's been in partnership with Triangle Community Foundation and the Durham community. Last year, when the explosion happened in downtown Durham, we were able to help those families that were struggling because we moved together on this. We didn't wait. And then with the McDougal terrorist tragedy, we were also able to work, again, in concert with community and listening to the needs of what was happening at McDougal Terrace, and not telling them what they need or funding what we think they need, but asking them first. And so we had a few at-bats with this. And the final point I'll make is with our tend to watch model, which really lifts up and gives access to women and leaders of color led organizations. Again, we're not telling them what they need. We're asking them what they see in the community and partnering with them in that way. Because too often the organizations that have the most access to power, as Zulayka was saying, and those folks tend to look like me, are the ones that get the larger grants, and we have to change that. We have to change that dynamic. The new normal cannot look like the old normal, because the old normal was not that great for a lot of people. It was leaving a lot of people behind. So we have to take the chaos and the uncertainty of this time and move it in a way that is better for all people, not just the select few.
I think these are really big questions and big sort of theoretical shifts that philanthropy and charity are going through. And Zulayka has mentioned several times this notion of trust-based philanthropy. And for folks who want to learn more about it, that is something that you can research. And there are a lot of organizations that are talking about this and providing more concrete guidance on how you take that new value and sort of new approach and implement it. So I'm glad that those conversations are happening, and glad that there are folks like Zulayka and Eric and Diane who are pushing the foundation to move in that direction as well. Does anybody have anything else that they want to share around some of the conversations we've been happening? Any last nugget that you'd like to share with the Triangle community?
Well, I will say that we're living in a very difficult moment as a country, as humanity on this planet. And in particular, those of us who are Black and brown folks are once again receiving the message loud and clear that our lives are unimportant and that our lives are disposable in so many different ways. And that my hope, again, is that we take this as an opportunity to deepen our sense of humanity and our sense of connection, so that anything that we do brings that lens, and not just our connection to each other as humans, but our connections to the more than human world. This is an opportunity for rebirth, or it could very well be the unraveling of our society. We're seeing the unraveling of our society, and that my hope is for the latter.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for those closing thoughts, Zulayka. Yeah, this could be a real opportunity, or we could see some major shifts. So I appreciate you ending on that note. And I want to thank each of you for all of the work that you've done and for taking a few minutes to share with us and with our community, sharing your perspectives and your stories. And in our last moment, if any of you have, want to plug your website or plug any events or fundraising that you have coming up, I'll just give you a moment to do that.
If you want to learn more about the art of giving, or if you want to become a member and help be a part of collective philanthropy, you can reach us on Facebook at The Art of Giving NC, or you can email me at theartofgivingnc@gmail.com.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you.
And our administrative home for the North Carolina Collaborative for Strong Latinx Communities is the Community Foundation of Greater Greensboro, and you can feel free to reach out there, either to Tara Sandercock or myself, if you're interested in being part of this awesome work.
UnitedWayTriangle.org is where you can learn more about us, UnitedWayTriangle.org. And just an honor to be with everyone today, and really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Community Foundation.
Thank you.
All right.